8 at night, in the Chin family villa.
In the damp and cold basement, Emily was curled up in a corner, shivering in her thin nightgown. Her bare feet were numb from the cold, and every breath she exhaled seemed to carry ice shards, causing a piercing pain in her lungs. 7 days. She had been locked in the basement for 7 whole days, without seeing the light of day. No one would have thought that the dignified wife of the president of the Chin Group in H City would end up in such a miserable and pitiful state. Finally, a familiar set of footsteps echoed, the iron door of the basement opened, and a tall, slender figure appeared at the entrance. The long period of darkness made it difficult for Emily to adjust to the sudden bright light. She instinctively raised her hand to shield her eyes and looked up at the man in front of her, her voice dry and hoarse.
John.
Tears of grievance slid down her cheeks as Emily's voice trembled.
Why are you doing this to me? John, what did I do wrong?
In the 3 years of their marriage, she had tried her best to be a good wife to John, taking care of his every need meticulously. Even though John never appreciated her efforts, she loved him deeply. Just being by his side made her feel content. But 7 days ago, John had suddenly come home reeking of alcohol, dragged her out of bed, and locked her in the basement before leaving without a word. Emily had no idea what she had done wrong. She had always been cautious, walking on eggshells to avoid displeasing John. She hadn't done anything, so why was John treating her like this?
How dare you ask why?
John looked down at Emily, who was cowering at his feet, his face full of disgust and hatred.
Look at this, these are the proofs of you orchestrating Sarah's kidnapping.
A stack of documents was thrown coldly onto Emily's face. She looked at them in confusion and shock.
What kidnapping? What proof? John, what are you talking about?
John felt nothing but revulsion at Emily's innocent expression. His voice was icy as he said,
Stop denying it. If Sarah hadn't come back and told me the truth, I would have continued to believe that she had heartlessly abandoned me. It turns out, it was all your doing. You went to great lengths to become Mrs. Johnson.
The documents contained photos of several unfamiliar men and some dubious confessions, accusing Emily of paying people to kidnap Sarah years ago, taking her place, and marrying John.
No. This isn't true. John, believe me, I don't know these people. Sarah's disappearance from the wedding had nothing to do with me. I didn't do anything.
Enough!
John interrupted her harshly, unwilling to listen to her explanations. He said sternly,
When Sarah first told me it was you, I didn't believe her. So I spent a week investigating. The facts prove that you, Emily, are a malicious and unscrupulous woman.
No, I didn't, John, please believe me, please believe me.
Emily, her face streaked with tears, crawled to John's feet, clutching his clothes and begging. John mercilessly pried her fingers away, his voice cold and unyielding.
The evidence is right in front of you, and you still won't admit it? Out of respect for the relationship between our families, I didn't send you to prison. That was already lenient. The position of Mrs. Johnson, which you stole, it's time to give it back.
With that, another set of documents fell at Emily's feet. It was a divorce agreement. John wanted to divorce her?
No. Please. I don't want a divorce. John, please don't divorce me.
Emily clung to John's legs, shaking her head desperately, humbly pleading.
I love you, John, I can't live without you.
John's face was stern, his eyes cold as he kicked Emily away.
Get away from me. Don't touch me.
Emily's head hit the wall, making her dizzy. She couldn't get up for a long time, and blood started to trickle down her legs. She felt a sharp pain in her abdomen, cold sweat breaking out on her forehead.
John, my stomach hurts. Take me to the hospital.
Because the corner was too dark, John didn't see the blood on the floor. Thinking about what she had done to Sarah, his anger flared, and he showed no mercy.
Emily, stop acting. Sign the divorce papers, and I'll let you out. Otherwise, you'll stay in here forever.
With that, he left without looking back. Emily curled up in pain, too weak to call for help. She felt as cold as if she had fallen into an ice cellar, her consciousness fading. Fortunately, the housekeeper who brought her food found her unconscious in the basement and took her to the hospital. When Emily woke up, the doctor was examining her.
Miss, your health isn't very good. You have low blood sugar and mild anemia. You must take care of yourself, or it will be hard to keep the baby.
Doctor, what did you say? I'm pregnant?
Yes, Miss Emily, you're over a month pregnant.
Emily couldn't believe it as she touched her still flat abdomen. She was carrying John's child. In their 3 years of marriage, John rarely touched her. Even when he did, he would watch her take contraceptives afterward. Only once, he got drunk and forgot to make her take the pills. She never expected that a small life would be growing inside her.
This is wonderful news. I can't wait to tell John.
At that moment, the door to her hospital room opened, and Sarah, who had been missing for 3 years, appeared before Emily.
Emily, long time no see. I heard you're pregnant, so I came to see you.
Sarah was dressed in expensive designer clothes, looking radiant, clearly well cared for by John. In contrast, Emily, the current Mrs. Johnson, looked haggard and desolate.
Sarah, why did you frame me? You know better than anyone that I never kidnapped you. What is your purpose in doing this?
If I didn't say that, how would John easily forgive me for running away from the wedding? How else could I reclaim my rightful place?
You were the one who abandoned John and disappeared without a trace. Now you think you can just come back whenever you want? What do you take John for?
Emily had no idea how much pain John's abandonment had caused him. He had been depressed for over 2 months before slowly recovering. Emily had no idea what she had done wrong. She had always been cautious, walking on eggshells to avoid displeasing John. She hadn't done anything, so why was John treating her like this?
How dare you ask why? Look at this. These are the proofs of you orchestrating Sarah's kidnapping.
A stack of documents was thrown coldly onto Emily's face. She looked at them in confusion and shock.
What kidnapping? What proof? John, what are you talking about?
Stop denying it. If Sarah hadn't come back and told me the truth, I would have continued to believe that she had heartlessly abandoned me. It turns out, it was all your doing. You went to great lengths to become Mrs. Johnson.
The documents contained photos of several unfamiliar men and some dubious confessions, accusing Emily of paying people to kidnap Sarah years ago, taking her place, and marrying John.
No. This isn't true. John, believe me, I don't know these people. Sarah's disappearance from the wedding had nothing to do with me. I didn't do anything.
Enough. When Sarah first told me it was you, I didn't believe her. So I spent a week investigating. The facts prove that you, Emily, are a malicious and unscrupulous woman.
No, I didn't, John, please believe me, please believe me.
Emily, her face streaked with tears, crawled to John's feet, clutching his clothes and begging.
The evidence is right in front of you, and you still won't admit it? Out of respect for the relationship between our families, I didn't send you to prison. That was already lenient. The position of Mrs. Johnson, which you stole, it's time to give it back.
With that, another set of documents fell at Emily's feet. Emily, with tears streaming down her face, touched her abdomen, her heart aching. This was her and John's only child. If she lost it, she would never have another chance. Even though John didn't care, she treasured it dearly.
No. I can't stay in the hospital and passively wait. I have to keep this child and leave with him.
The assistant guarding the door had been sent away by Sarah for some reason, allowing Emily to leave the hospital smoothly. Watching Emily's hurried escape, Sarah's lips curled into a cold smile as she dialed a number.
She's out. The rest is up to you.
Hanging up the phone, Sarah felt quite pleased. She had anticipated that Emily wouldn't immediately wait for a procedure. This was the perfect opportunity to deliver a blow that would ensure Emily could never recover. As soon as Emily left the hospital, a figure appeared out of nowhere, covering her mouth and nose with a cloth soaked in a sedative and quickly taking her to a nearby van. When Emily woke up, her head throbbed with pain. A hand suddenly reached out and held her, and a stranger's laughter echoed in the darkness.
What's happening?
Emily instantly became much more alert, hurriedly reaching out to turn on the room's light. Under the light, the scattered clothes and the disheveled bed suggested what might have happened. She looked down at herself, finding she was only wearing a thin camisole, while the man beside her was completely naked, with a lecherous expression.
No. This can't be happening.
Before she could figure out what had happened, the door was suddenly kicked open.
Emily, how could you do such a thing?
No, it's not like that. John, listen to me, I was drugged. I don't know this man. Please believe me, I didn't do anything to betray you.
I haven't touched you for a month, and you can't stand the loneliness? If I can't satisfy you, why do you keep clinging to me and refuse to divorce?
I really didn't. John, please believe me.
Emily's camisole slipped off her shoulder, revealing large purple-red kiss marks and ambiguous traces. Those marks were undeniable evidence of Emily's infidelity, deeply wounding John's eyes.
John, considering what Emily did, it might not be the first time. Who knows if the child is really yours? What if?
You're right. Emily, we're going to the hospital for a paternity test.
John, where are you taking me? Let go of me, let go of me.
John ignored Emily's cries, roughly shoving her into the car and driving straight to the hospital.
No. I don't want to go to the hospital. Let go of me. John, let go of me. I beg you, don't harm our child.
Our child? Until a paternity test is done, we don't know if this child is mine or some other man's.
He is your child, he really is your child, John. Why can't you believe me just once?
I only believe what I see with my own eyes.
Several assistants and medical staff rushed in, ignoring Emily's resistance, and took her to the operating room to forcibly extract amniotic fluid. After the procedure, Emily, already weak, developed a high fever and, in her delirium, kept crying out for John to believe her. When Emily woke up again, it was the next morning. The door to the ward opened, and John and Sarah walked in.
The evidence is clear. What else do you have to say?
The paternity test clearly showed that the probability of John being the father of Emily's unborn child was less than 5%, meaning the child couldn't be John's.
No! This can't be. The test is fake. It can't be.
Emily's face turned as white as snow. Her hands trembled as she picked up the paternity test, reading it over and over, her eyes red with tears.
There must be a mistake with this test, John. Believe me, I would never lie to you about the child. I swear.
Enough. This is the result from the most reputable testing agency. It can't be wrong. Emily, even now, you're still denying it? Do you think I'm a fool?
I didn't. John, I never did anything to betray you.
Tears of grievance slowly rolled down her cheeks. Emily bit her lip hard, the taste of blood filling her mouth. John had never wanted to believe that Emily, who had been devoted to him for over a decade, could betray him. But the irrefutable evidence left him no choice. Yet, for some reason, the thought of her with another man made him feel a murderous rage. Perhaps, deep down, he considered Emily his possession, not to be touched by anyone else.
Emily, I never thought you were this kind of person. You hired people to kidnap me to get John, ruining our wedding. I forgave you because I thought you truly loved him. But now, you've done something so disgraceful. If this gets out, how will John face anyone in H City?
Emily's eyes, red like a rabbit's, glared at Sarah, wishing she could strangle the woman who twisted the truth.
Sarah, don't think I don't know this is all you're doing. You framed me, accused me, just to steal John from me. Don't forget, you were the one who left.
Before she could finish, John slapped Emily across the face, leaving one side of her face swollen and the taste of blood even stronger in her mouth.
Shut up! Emily, you've done so many terrible things and still refuse to repent, trying to blame others? You disgust me!
The man she had loved with all her heart for 10 years, standing before her, coldly and heartlessly calling her disgusting. Yet he didn't know that the real liar, the truly repulsive person, was the one he now protected, Sarah.
But even so, what could she do? Her heaven and hell were all in John's hands. If he believed her, she was innocent. If he didn't, she was guilty beyond redemption.
Emily's face was covered in tears, her heart aching. John glanced coldly at Emily, ordering,
I've arranged for the procedure. Until it's done, you won't leave this room.
No. I won't do it. John, please, don't hurt my child. I beg you, I don't want anything else, just this child.
Emily no longer wanted to explain. She got off the hospital bed, knelt in front of John, and tearfully pleaded. Carrying another man's child and still having the audacity to beg him? How shameless could she be?
Whether you want the procedure or not isn't up to you. Our family can't bear the shame.
With that, he slammed the door and left, leaving Emily in despair, slumped on the floor, her face ashen.
What? Still not giving up? If you had stepped aside earlier, this wouldn't have happened. You insisted on fighting me. You're still too naive to compete with me.
Emily, her eyes bloodshot, looked up and grabbed Sarah's arm like a madwoman, questioning.
Why? Why harm my child? He's innocent. Why can't you even spare a child?
Don't blame me. Blame his bad luck. You took something that wasn't yours.
Emily sat in John's study, her eyes wide with confusion and fear.
John, what have I done wrong? Why are you treating me like this?
How dare you ask why? Look at these! These are the proofs of you orchestrating Sarah's kidnapping.
John threw a stack of documents at Emily's feet. She picked them up, her hands trembling.
What kidnapping? What proof? John, I don't understand what you're talking about.
Stop denying it. Sarah told me everything. I would have continued to believe she had heartlessly abandoned me if it weren't for her. It turns out it was all your doing to become Mrs. Johnson.
The documents contained photos of unfamiliar men and dubious confessions, accusing Emily of paying people to kidnap Sarah years ago.
No, this isn't true. John, please, believe me. I don't know these people. Sarah's disappearance had nothing to do with me.
Enough. I spent a week investigating. The facts prove you are a malicious and unscrupulous woman.
No, John, please believe me, please.
Emily crawled to John's feet, clutching his clothes, tears streaming down her face.
The evidence is right in front of you, and you still won't admit it? Out of respect for our families, I didn't send you to prison. But the position of Mrs. Johnson, which you stole, it's time to give it back.
Another set of documents fell at Emily's feet. Emily was eventually taken to the hospital. The doctor said Emily's physical condition wasn't suitable for a termination procedure and that she needed a few days of rest. However, since John had forcibly brought her back to the hospital, she had refused to eat or drink, not cooperating with the treatment. Her condition had worsened instead of improving. Sarah, upon learning that Emily was delaying the procedure by refusing to eat, grew anxious as the divorce proceedings were also stalled. She approached a gynecologist she knew, discreetly slipping a bank card into his hand.
Dr. Smith, Mr. Johnson's intention is that Emily cannot keep this baby. If this drags on and the media finds out, it will negatively impact the Johnson group. Please arrange the procedure quickly to avoid any complications.
Dr. Smith looked troubled.
Miss Sarah, we understand Mr. Johnson's wishes, but Emily's current condition makes the procedure very risky. If anything goes wrong, our hospital can't bear the responsibility.
Don't worry about that. Mr. Johnson has long wanted to get rid of this shameless woman. As long as you arrange the procedure, we'll take any risks. If anything unfortunate happens during the procedure, I'll give you this amount again. Dr. Smith, you're a smart man. You should understand what I mean.
Sarah held up 3 fingers. $300,000 was no small amount. But to remove Emily and secure her position as the wife of the Johnson Group's CEO, even $3 million would be worth it. Dr. Smith was clearly tempted. Moreover, this was John's wish. If he didn't comply, he would offend the Johnson Group and find it hard to continue his career in H-City. That afternoon, the hospital arranged the procedure for Emily. Having refused to eat or drink for days, Emily was dizzy and weak. Lying on the hospital bed, her voice was hoarse, and she could only watch helplessly as several doctors and nurses swarmed in to push her towards the operating room.
John. John, where is John?
Seeing Sarah standing in the hallway with a smile but not seeing John, Emily felt a growing unease and called out his name with all her strength.
The doctor had said they would wait until my body was ready for the procedure. Why am I being taken to the operating room without any notice? What is going on?
Don't bother looking for him. John is busy and doesn't have time to see you. Don't think that by delaying, John will change his mind. I'm telling you, John has no patience left for you. We're getting married soon, and you're just in the way, making John very unhappy. So he asked me to help you get rid of this child.
This isn't just any child, it's mine and John's. Sarah, you'll pay for this.
Emily clenched her fists, her nearly translucent skin showing faint blue veins.
Retribution? Emily, even if it exists, you won't live to see it.
With that, she gave Dr. Smith a look, and he immediately had his assistant push Emily inside. Emily resisted with all her might, unwilling to undergo the procedure, but the anesthesia quickly took effect, and soon, she lost all consciousness. John's assistant called, informing him that Emily had been taken into the operating room for a procedure. Hearing this, John frowned slightly, his deep eyes darkening. After hesitating for a moment, he sent someone to drive him to the hospital. Although he had been busy with company matters and hadn't had time to deal with Emily's situation, his assistant had been keeping him updated on her condition. He had heard that Emily had refused to eat or drink and was unwilling to cooperate with the procedure. They had planned to wait until she was more stable, but unexpectedly, the procedure had been carried out without his permission.
Sarah, what's going on? Who authorized the procedure?
John, you don't know. Emily's health was already poor, and she was being uncooperative. The doctor said that if this continued, not only would the baby be at risk, but her health would also suffer. So they suggested removing the baby to reduce her physical burden. I didn't want to bother you with such a small matter since you're busy with work, so I.
As she spoke, she observed John's expression, tentatively asking,
John, you won't blame me for making this decision, will you?
Of course not. I know you did it for her own good. This baby had to be removed sooner or later, and doing it earlier isn't a bad thing.
Hearing John's words, Sarah secretly breathed a sigh of relief, a reassuring smile appearing on her face. At that moment, a doctor in sterile clothing suddenly emerged from the operating room, urgently calling out,
Who is the patient's family?
I'm her husband. How is my wife?
The patient is experiencing severe complications. We urgently need a blood transfusion.
Then what are you waiting for? Hurry up! I'm telling you, nothing can happen to my wife. If anything happens to her in your hospital, you'll be held accountable.
It's not that we don't want to give her a transfusion, but the patient's blood type is Rh negative, a rare type. Our hospital's blood bank doesn't have it. Even if we request it from another hospital, it will be too late.
What do you mean by that? Didn't you prepare for this before the procedure?
Well,
The doctor was stunned by John's anger. He knew very well the consequences of offending the CEO of the Johnson Group in H City. But the procedure had been arranged at the last minute, with no preparations made. He hadn't anticipated such complications.
John, don't be angry. Take care of your health.
Sarah said, witnessing everything and secretly gritting her teeth. She had thought John didn't care about Emily's fate, but he was furious for her. It seemed she had underestimated Emily's importance to John. If they left Emily on the operating table now, she would surely die. But if that happened, John would blame her for arranging the procedure. But so what? Emily had to leave for her to become Mrs. Johnson. Emily had no idea what she had done wrong. She was always cautious, walking on eggshells to avoid displeasing John. She hadn't done anything, so why was John treating her like this?
How dare you ask why?
John looked down at Emily, who was cowering at his feet, his face full of disgust and hatred.
Look at this, these are the proofs of you orchestrating Sarah's kidnapping.
A stack of documents was thrown coldly onto Emily's face. She looked at them in confusion and shock.
What kidnapping? What proof? John, what are you talking about?
John felt nothing but revulsion at Emily's innocent expression.
Stop denying it. If Sarah hadn't come back and told me the truth, I would have continued to believe that she had heartlessly abandoned me. It turns out, it was all your doing. You went to great lengths to become Mrs. Johnson.
The documents contained photos of several unfamiliar men and some dubious confessions, accusing Emily of paying people to kidnap Sarah years ago, taking her place, and marrying John.
No. This isn't true. John, believe me, I don't know these people. Sarah's disappearance from the wedding had nothing to do with me. I didn't do anything.
Enough! When Sarah first told me it was you, I didn't believe her. So I spent a week investigating. The facts prove that you, Emily, are a malicious and unscrupulous woman.
No, I didn't, John, please believe me, please believe me.
Emily, her face streaked with tears, crawled to John's feet, clutching his clothes and begging.
The evidence is right in front of you, and you still won't admit it? Out of respect for the relationship between our families, I didn't send you to prison. That was already lenient. The position of Mrs. Johnson, which you stole, it's time to give it back.
With that, another set of documents fell at Emily's feet.